This podcast is for those who are new to Battletech. I want to talk about, I want us to explore setting up the visuals of the game and being a war game. I mean, you can play on the hex map. You're playing with miniatures. There's rules, there's dice. Battletech is a war game. We're trying to create a narrative. We're trying to, in my opinion, without getting too esoteric, step out of space and time. I noticed this when I started playing historicals with the historical gaming group years ago, playing DBA, DBN, playing my Romans. Historical war gamers, the terrain is flawless. The armies are painted. They have unit markings, squadron markings, and there's points in the game when you can step back from the table and really get the scale and scope of this perspective. It's like it comes alive. It's like we have stepped into actual living history. And the same is true with Battletech. This narrative, far in the future, let's try to create something living on the table for the couple of hours that we're playing. Now, naturally, the easiest way to do this, and I want to encourage you if you're new to the game, is to paint your mechs. That is a scope for another podcast. That is the scope that other YouTube channels do much, much better. There's a lot of great Facebook groups that I'm a part of where you can get encouragement and people share their hobby stuff they're working on, the stuff they're posting. I've posted my own kind of paint progress on my blog. The link is underneath this podcast. So I understand it can be very intimidating to paint your mechs if you're new to the hobby. But there's a lot of great steps, a lot of great tutorials to make that happen. And even from the perspective of someone that has experience painting miniatures and understands that, it is definitely possible to do in a very short amount of time and really have something that looks great. So just putting a little bit of paint on your miniatures, fantastic. That said, it's Battletech. The miniatures are just placeholders. There's nothing wrong, absolutely nothing wrong, playing unpainted. My set of Game of Armored Combat, I have two sets. One of the miniatures I painted up for my mercenary company, and one set I'm just leaving completely unpainted to kind of bring along and play. Also because I can't even really decide how I want to paint them yet. So nothing wrong with playing unpainted. Nothing wrong with playing with cardboard miniatures, some of the older sets in there, or proxies. There's no right or wrong way visually to play Battletech, but I want to kind of push you in that direction or to consider it. The next piece is to play with terrain on there, and this can be done even with the hex map. So Battletech, and this is also playing in a little bit to Alpha Strike, kind of two ways to play, two decision trees. Play in a hex map, and they look great, re-imaged, fantastic, ready to go. Whether it's the Catalyst maps or on the Battletech forum, there's a lot of great custom maps that literally you can print out and get sprayed over various posters and mats and sizes. Some really, really good stuff there. But likewise, you could also play it on a traditional wargaming table where you've got miniature trees and miniature buildings and hills. So adding some terrain, adding some 3D begins to really, really make the game pop, make the game stand out, especially if you're playing with miniatures. The easiest way to get into that, and it's less intimidating than you think, Battletech is essentially Z-scale, model railroad Z-scale. So just investing in some trees and some hills and some model railroad terrain, you have that in a box, minimal investment, looks great, ready to go. And of course, as you increase in the hobby, you can build your own terrain, you can build your own hills, your own sci-fi buildings, communication array. The idea is over time, much like your Battletech miniature collection, to slowly upgrade. You know, you start with one terrain set, you build more, maybe you add a building on there, maybe you push the scope out a little bit more, and before you know it, you've got some pretty impressive terrain on there. You can also do this with the hex maps on there. What I've seen and what I have, and it fits into a box, is on washers to give it some weight, metal washers, a single tree, a couple of rocks painted to look like rubble, and some damage on there for the terrain. some smoothed out rocks for the hills, representing level 1, level 2, level 3, where literally I'll place these washers on the hex map, and if a mech moves into that hex, you take the washer off, you put the mech down, and of course you can understand based on the printing on the map where it is. So you could even push out the hex maps to move that way, although that's not really as necessary because, again, the hex maps look great. The final piece, consider battle damage. Consider battle effects. And this is something that I really enjoy playing with. You're going to need a lot more than you think, so you want that first batch to be really, really big. But it really shows after the battle kind of how things progressed, where the action was, and when you step away when the game's over to look and be like, wow. Taking, again, some metal washers or wooden tokens, really whatever you have. Could even be punched out cardboard rounds. And taking some pillow flock or some sort of cotton out there and pulling it to make smoke effects. Imagine some missiles hit, things go on fire. You could hit it up with some spray paint on there and kind of hit some red and some oranges to make it look like a fire effect. Taking battle damage, taking some broken mechs or just some plastic pieces and kind of chopping them up and putting them on a base to represent an exploded mech or when pieces of a mech drop off. I have a couple of miscasted arms and legs and kind of pieces of torsos that have battle damage that I've mounted on washers. So literally, like if my mech, last game, my stalker exploded, I was pushing the heat, it exploded on there, and which only seems to happen with the stalker. So literally I have like this mech leg on fire. Put that where the miniature was, and then remove the miniature. If you get your arm blown off, technically you can pick it up if it's in that hex and use it as a club, but to put that damage there. When someone fires off, a bunch of long-range missiles, and whether they hit or miss, I'll put down 2 or 3 or 4 of these smoke markers next to my mechs on there. And what you see over time is how the battle is fought, where it's fought. Now, this is purely visual. This is purely cosmetic. So as we litter the table with these exploded bits and smoke and fire, we also have little shells, which represent, like if a mech, my Jaeger mech or my Blackjack is just ripping off with those autocannons to kind of put those tokens next to it so you can see that. They don't block line of sight. They don't give you any cover. They have zero effect on the game. I mean, that's only fair because it's kind of arbitrary where things get placed. I also have bits of pillow stuffing painted up that you can pull and put on the mechs on there. Just literally wrap it around the arms, wrap it around the legs, wrap it around the head. So as I take damage and my mech is literally smoking, just to represent that on the table, it adds another layer of window dressing. It adds another layer of taking Battletech into this. And ultimately, for me, and what I want to push out and share with you, besides massive enthusiasm and hopefully some tactics to give you stuff to think about, in this hobby, we're taking time out of real life. We're taking time out of, depending on where you are in life, everyone has responsibilities. It could be to work, it could be to family, friends, school, and absolutely you need some time to play Battletech and decompress and pursue your passions in there. But I believe if we're taking time to do something, and this is related to everything, then as best we can, let's make that memorable. As best we can, let's make this be like, this is the last Battletech game we're ever going to play. So let's get some awesome miniatures on there. Let's get some awesome terrain, some battle effects. Let's get some food going. Let's get that 80s theme music going. Let's get an amazing mission going and try to create that something in the moment. So balancing out my tactics, balancing out some battle reports on my blog, I want to push that narrative out to you, those of us who are new to Battletech, because this is something that over time, slowly you can build up your collection, slowly you can build up your terrain, slowly you can build up your effects, and whatever direction you go in Battletech in terms of your mech collection, you're always going to find a place and a time and a way to utilize that window dressing.